The alien invasion and Earth's fall. The sky turned an ominous shade of crimson as the alien mothership entered Earth's atmosphere. For weeks, astronomers had tracked the massive vessel's approach, helpless to do anything but watch and wait. Now, as it loomed over the planet's surface, casting mile-wide shadows across continents, humanity collectively held its breath. Dr. Elena Reeves stood in the control room of the Global Defense Initiative's headquarters, her eyes fixed on the massive holographic display showing the alien ship's position. As the lead scientist for Earth's planetary defense systems, she had spent the last decade developing what she believed to be humanity's ultimate safeguard, the Helios Array, a network of orbital satellites capable of channeling the sun's energy into a devastating beam. "This is our moment," she muttered, more to herself than to the tense room of military personnel and fellow scientists. "Everything we've worked for comes down to this." General Marcus Stone, a grizzled veteran with more combat experience than most of the room combined, stepped forward. "Dr. Reeves, the alien vessel has breached our outer defensive line. Your weapon is cleared to fire." Elena nodded, her fingers dancing across the control panel. The Helios Array hummed to life, its massive solar collectors unfurling like metallic flowers in space. Energy readings spiked as the satellites began to channel the sun's power. Charging at 60%, 80%, 95%. Elena called out, her voice steady, despite the weight of billions of lives resting on her shoulders. Full charge achieved. Firing in 3, 2, 1. A blinding flash lit up the sky as the Helios Array discharged its accumulated energy. The beam, visible from the ground as a pillar of light, struck the alien mothership dead center. For a moment, hope surged through the control room. This was humanity's trump card, the result of years of research and global cooperation. Surely, no technology could withstand such raw power. But as the light faded, the alien ship remained, not only intact but seemingly unaffected. "Impossible," Elena whispered, her face pale. "The energy readings, it should have vaporized half the ship." Before anyone could respond, the alien vessel pulsed with an eerie green glow. Suddenly, every screen in the control room went dark. The Helios Array, humanity's greatest achievement, had been neutralized in an instant. General Stone's voice cut through the shocked silence. "All units, this is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. Initiate Operation Last Stand." As chaos erupted in the control room, Elena stood frozen, her mind racing. How could their calculations have been so wrong? What kind of technology could shrug off that level of energy? The next hours passed in a blur of frantic activity and mounting despair. Conventional weapons proved just as ineffective as the Helios Array. Nuclear warheads detonated harmlessly against the alien ship's shields. Fighter jets were swatted from the sky like insects, and all the while, the invaders began their harvest. Massive beams of energy lanced down from the mothership, carving deep furrows into the earth. Soil, water, and even the air itself seemed to be drawn upward, swallowed by the insatiable maw of the alien vessel. Entire cities were lifted from their foundations, their inhabitants screaming as they were pulled into the sky. Elena watched in horror as the holographic display showed the spread of destruction. Europe was already a wasteland, its lush forests and ancient cities reduced to barren rock. Asia's population centers had been decimated, leaving only scattered pockets of resistance. Even the vast oceans were not spared, as the aliens drained them of resources humanity didn't even know existed. "Dr. Reeves," General Stone's voice pulled her from her daze. "We're evacuating to the underground bunkers. You need to come with us." Elena shook her head. "No, I need to stay. There has to be something we missed, some weakness we can exploit." The general's face softened for a moment. "Elena, I know how much you've sacrificed for this project, but it's over. We need to regroup to find another way. You're no good to anyone if you're dead." Reluctantly, Elena allowed herself to be led from the control room. As they made their way to the evacuation point, the ground shook violently. Through a reinforced window, she caught a glimpse of the alien mothership descending further, its massive form blotting out the sun. The bunker was a hive of activity as military personnel and civilians alike scrambled for safety. Elena found herself ushered into a small room filled with computer terminals and worried faces. These were the brightest minds humanity had to offer, now reduced to hiding underground while their world was torn apart above them. Days passed, then weeks. The bunker's sensors painted a grim picture of the world outside. The aliens' harvest continued unabated, stripping the planet of its resources with ruthless efficiency. Attempts to communicate or negotiate had been met with silence. It seemed the invaders viewed humanity as nothing more than an insignificant pest in their path. Elena threw herself into her work, analyzing every scrap of data they could gather on the alien technology. But with each passing day, hope dwindled. Their most advanced weapons had been useless. Their greatest scientific achievements had been brushed aside like children's toys. What chance did they have now, huddled in the dark while their world died above them? It was during one of her rare moments of rest that the idea struck her. Elena had been leafing through an old history book, a relic of simpler times, when she came across a passage about ancient warfare. Tanks, armored vehicles that had once dominated battlefields, now long obsolete in the age of energy weapons and orbital strikes. At first, she dismissed the thought as absurd. How could outdated war machines possibly stand against an enemy that had shrugged off their most advanced technology? But the idea nagged at her, refusing to let go. What if, she mused aloud, drawing curious glances from her fellow scientists? The very primitiveness of these weapons is what makes them effective. The room fell silent as Elena explained her theory. The aliens had clearly prepared for humanity's most advanced defenses, easily countering energy weapons and electronic warfare. But what if they hadn't accounted for simpler, more brutal forms of combat? It was a long shot, bordering on desperation. But as General Stone often said, desperate times call for desperate measures. And times had never been more desperate than now. With renewed purpose, Elena and her team began to work. They pored over old military archives, studying the designs of tanks and other armored vehicles that had been gathering dust for decades. The challenge was immense. Not only did they need to recreate these machines, but they had to do so with limited resources and in complete secrecy. As the weeks turned to months, word of the project spread through the bunker. At first, many dismissed it as a fool's errand, a waste of precious time and materials. But as the first prototype rumbled to life in a hastily constructed underground factory, a spark of hope began to ignite. Elena stood before the assembled crowd, her voice carrying over the low growl of the tank's engine. "I know many of you think this is madness," she began, her eyes scanning the sea of skeptical faces. And maybe it is. But we've tried fighting the aliens with our most advanced technology, and we failed. Now we fight with the weapons of our ancestors, with steel and fire and human determination. She placed a hand on the tank's armored hull, feeling the vibration of its powerful engine. This is more than just a machine. It's a symbol of humanity's resilience, our refusal to go quietly into the night. The aliens may have superior technology, but we have something they can never match: the will to survive, to fight against impossible odds. As she spoke, Elena saw the change in the crowd. Doubt gave way to determination, fear to fierce resolve. They had been hiding for too long, watching helplessly as their world was torn apart. Now, at last, they had a chance to fight back. The first tank was just the beginning. Soon, the underground factory was working around the clock, producing a fleet of armored vehicles. Volunteers stepped forward to train as crews, learning to operate machines that belonged to another era. As the alien harvest continued above, humanity prepared for its last desperate stand. The tanks, hidden away in underground bunkers, waited for the moment to strike. It was a plan born of desperation, a Hail Mary pass in the face of certain defeat. But as Elena looked out over the growing army of steel beasts, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope. The aliens had brought their advanced technology to bear against humanity's greatest achievements and had emerged victorious. Now it was time to see how they fared against the brutal simplicity of tracks, armor, and high explosive shells. The stage was set for a battle that would determine the fate of Earth. Humanity, armed with weapons from its past, prepared to face an enemy from beyond the stars. As the first teams of tank crews prepared to emerge from their underground shelters, Elena silently prayed that their gamble would pay off. For if it didn't, there would be no second chances. This was humanity's last stand, a final defiant roar against the dying of the light. The tanks rumbled to life, their engines echoing through the underground chambers like the beating heart of a wounded but unbroken species. The counterattack was about to begin. The discovery of ancient war machines. The underground bunker hummed with a nervous energy as Elena Reeves stood before a weathered steel door, its surface marred by decades of neglect. Behind her, a small team of engineers and military personnel waited with bated breath. This forgotten storage facility, buried deep beneath the ruins of what was once a thriving military base, represented their last hope. "Are you sure about this, Dr. Reeves?" Captain Sarah Chen, a young but battle-hardened soldier, asked skeptically. "We're betting everything on some old rust buckets." Elena took a deep breath, steeling herself. "Sometimes, Captain, the past holds the key to our future." With a nod to the technician beside her, she gave the order. "Open it." The ancient mechanisms groaned in protest, but slowly the massive door began to slide open. As light flooded into the cavernous space beyond, a collective gasp rippled through the group. Row upon row of tanks and armored vehicles stretched into the darkness, their hulking forms covered in thick layers of dust. "My God," General Stone whispered, his usual stoic demeanor cracking. "There must be hundreds of them." Elena stepped forward, running her hand along the cold metal of the nearest tank. It was a behemoth, easily twice the size of any modern combat vehicle. The barrel of its main gun looked like it could punch through a skyscraper. "These aren't just any tanks," she explained, excitement creeping into her voice. "These are prototypes from Project Titan, a Cold War initiative to create the ultimate land warfare vehicle. They were mothballed when the project was deemed too costly and impractical." Captain Chen frowned, circling one of the massive machines. "Impractical is right. How are we supposed to fuel these things? And the logistics of moving them?" "That's where you're wrong," Elena interrupted, her eyes gleaming. "These tanks were designed to operate in post-apocalyptic conditions. They run on a variety of fuel sources, including synthesized biofuels we can produce underground. As for logistics, they're modular. We can disassemble and reassemble them in the field." General Stone nodded slowly, beginning to see the potential. "And their very obsolescence might be their greatest strength. The aliens won't be prepared for this kind of warfare." As the initial shock wore off, the team sprang into action. Engineers swarmed over the vehicles, assessing their condition and beginning the arduous process of restoration. It was a race against time. They needed a functional armored force before the aliens completed their harvest of Earth. Weeks passed in a flurry of activity. The underground facility was transformed into a makeshift factory and training ground. Elena worked tirelessly alongside mechanics and engineers, updating the tank systems where they could and marveling at the ingenuity of their predecessors where they couldn't. One particular challenge was the tank's targeting systems. Modern electronic warfare would be useless against the aliens, so they had to rely on more primitive mechanical methods. It was Captain Chen who proposed a solution. "We go old school," she suggested during a late-night strategy session. "Optical rangefinders, manual fire control. It's slower, but it can't be jammed or hacked." Elena nodded approvingly. "Exactly. We're not trying to outthink their technology. We're bypassing it entirely." As the first restored tanks rumbled to life, a new problem emerged: crew training. Most of the world's experienced tank operators had been lost in the initial invasion. They needed to train a new generation, and fast. It was here that an unlikely hero emerged. Sergeant Mike O'Malley, a grizzled veteran who had been weeks away from retirement when the invasion hit, stepped forward. He had trained on similar vehicles decades ago and quickly became the heart and soul of the training program. "Listen up, you sorry excuses for tank crews." His voice boomed across the training area. "These beauties ain't like your fancy modern tanks. They're crude, they're loud, and they'll shake the fillings out of your teeth. But by God, they'll keep you alive long enough to send those alien bastards packing." His gruff demeanor and endless supply of colorful insults masked a deep well of knowledge and experience. Under his tutelage, civilians and soldiers alike were molded into competent tank operators. As the training progressed, Alina found herself spending more time in the field, away from her labs and computers. There was something viscerally satisfying about the tanks. Their raw power, the smell of oil and metal, the thunder of their engines. It was a far cry from the sterile, high-tech world she was used to, but in these desperate times, it felt right. One evening, as she was elbow-deep in the engine of a particularly stubborn tank, Captain Chen approached her. "You know, for an egghead scientist, you're not half bad with a wrench," she remarked, a hint of admiration in her voice. Alina smiled, wiping grease from her forehead. "My father was a mechanic. He always said understanding how things work is the first step to making them work better." Chen nodded, her expression growing serious. "Do you really think this will work? That we can beat them with these relics?" Alina paused, considering her words carefully. "Honestly, I don't know, but I do know that humanity has faced extinction before. Ice ages, plagues, world wars. Each time, we've survived not because we were the strongest or the smartest, but because we were the most adaptable. These tanks represent that adaptability. We're taking the weapons of our past and using them to fight for our future." As they spoke, a commotion erupted near the command center. General Stone's voice cut through the noise, urgent and commanding. "Dr. Reeves, Captain Chen, we need you immediately." They rushed to the center, pushing through a crowd of anxious personnel. On the main screen, satellite imagery showed a terrifying sight. The alien mothership was on the move, descending from its high orbit. Its massive form cast a shadow over an entire continent. "They're making their final push," Stone explained grimly. "Intelligence suggests they're preparing to strip mine the entire eastern seaboard in one go. If they succeed, they'll have enough resources to move on to the next planet. Earth will be left a lifeless husk." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This was it, the moment they had been preparing for. Humanity's last stand. Alina stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear churning in her gut. "How many tanks do we have ready?" A technician consulted his tablet. 57, ma'am. Another 30 could be operational within 48 hours. It'll have to do, Stone growled. We move out at dawn. As the room erupted into frenzied activity, Alina felt a hand on her shoulder. It was Sergeant O'Malley, his weathered face set in grim determination. "Well, Doc," he said, his Irish brogue thicker than usual. "Looks like it's time to see if these old war horses have one last fight in them." Alina nodded, a mix of fear and determination coursing through her. "They'd better, Sergeant, for all our sakes." As dawn broke over a ravaged earth, the ground trembled with the movement of metal giants. From hidden bunkers and concealed mountain bases, tanks emerged by the dozens. Their engines roared defiance against the alien oppressors, a sound that hadn't been heard on a battlefield in generations. In the lead tank, Alina sat behind Captain Chen, her hands gripping the edge of the hatch as they rolled towards their destiny. The alien mothership loomed on the horizon, a dark promise of extinction. But as she looked at the determination on the faces of the crew, at the long column of tanks stretching behind them, she felt a surge of hope. They were humanity's last, best hope. A primitive force facing an advanced alien foe, David against Goliath, with the fate of the world hanging in the balance. As they crested a hill, the full might of the alien harvest operation came into view. Massive energy beams carved into the earth, pulling resources into the gaping maw of the mothership. Swarms of smaller craft darted about, protecting the operation. Captain Chen's voice crackled over the radio, steady and determined. All units, this is Titan Actual. Weapons free. Give 'em hell. With a thunderous roar, the tanks opened fire. Shell after shell arsed towards the alien positions, a hail of steel and explosives unlike anything the invaders had faced before. The battle for Earth's survival had begun, with humanity's forgotten weapons leading the charge. As the first explosions blossomed against the alien shields, Elena silently prayed that their desperate gamble would pay off. The fate of the world rested on the treads of these ancient war machines and the courage of those who crewed them. The final confrontation had begun, and there would be no second chances. It was victory or extinction. Humanity's counterattack and initial victories. The thunderous roar of tank fire shattered the eerie silence that had fallen over the ravaged landscape. Elena gripped the edges of the hatch, her knuckles white as their tank, christened Iron Hope, lurched forward. Captain Chen's face was a mask of concentration as she maneuvered the massive vehicle, coordinating with other units over the crackling radio. The alien response was swift and terrifying. Energy beams lanced down from the mothership, vaporizing earth and metal alike. But something unexpected happened. The tanks, with their primitive armor and lack of advanced electronics, proved surprisingly resilient. It's working. Elena shouted over the din of battle. Their energy weapons are calibrated for our modern defenses. They're not as effective against simple steel and composite armor. Sergeant O'Malley's gruff laugh came over the comm. Hear that, lads? Grandpa's old tin cans are tougher than those alien pop guns. The alien ground forces, caught off guard by the unusual attack, scrambled to regroup. Their sleek insectoid vehicles were faster and more agile than the human tanks, but they lacked the raw stopping power. A direct hit from one of the tank's main guns could obliterate even the largest alien walker. As the battle raged, Elena divided her attention between coordinating the overall strategy and analyzing the aliens' responses. Each engagement provided valuable data on their capabilities and limitations. They're adapting, she warned over the command channel. Their energy weapons are becoming more effective. We need to keep moving, don't give them a stationary target. The human forces pushed forward, their advance slow but relentless. The modular nature of the tanks proved invaluable. When one was damaged, crews could quickly swap out components or even combine parts from multiple vehicles to keep fighting. Hours passed, the battlefield a chaos of explosions, energy beams, and billowing smoke. Losses mounted on both sides, but the human forces pressed on, driven by desperation and the knowledge that this was their last chance. A breakthrough came near dusk. A coordinated barrage from a group of tanks managed to overload the shields protecting one of the alien harvesting beams. The massive structure collapsed, crushing several alien craft beneath it. A ragged cheer went up over the human comm channels. "We got one," Captain Chen exclaimed, a rare smile breaking through her usually stern demeanor. "Push forward, don't let them regroup." The aliens, facing unexpected resistance, began to pull back. Their harvest operation, once a model of efficiency, had been thrown into disarray. The mothership, which had been descending to begin the final strip mining of the planet, halted its approach. As night fell, the human forces consolidated their gains. Field repair units worked tirelessly to patch up damaged tanks, while fresh crews rotated in to relieve the exhausted initial wave. In a hastily established command post, Elena pored over battle reports and sensor data. General Stone stood nearby, his face haggard but eyes bright with renewed hope. "We've bloodied their nose," he said, studying a holographic map of the battlefield. "But they'll be back, and in greater numbers. We need to press our advantage while we have it." Elena nodded, her mind racing. "We need to target their resource processing facilities. If we can disrupt their harvest enough, we might force them to abandon the operation entirely. As they strategized, a commotion outside drew their attention. A group of civilians, who had been hiding in nearby ruins, approached the camp. They carried whatever weapons they could find: hunting rifles, homemade explosives, even farming tools. An older man, his face weathered and determined, stepped forward. "We've seen what your tanks can do," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "We want to help. This is our planet too." General Stone exchanged a glance with Alina. They both knew the risks of involving untrained civilians, but they also understood the power of a populace fighting for its very existence. "Get them to Sergeant O'Malley," Stone ordered. "If they want to fight, we'll find a use for them." As the impromptu militia was integrated into their forces, Alina felt a swell of pride and determination. This was humanity at its best: resourceful, united, and unyielding in the face of overwhelming odds. The next day dawned blood-red, the sky choked with dust and smoke from the ongoing battle. The alien counterattack came just as the human forces were preparing to move out. Swarms of fighter craft darkened the sky, while massive walkers stomped across the battlefield, their energy weapons fully recalibrated to deal with the human tanks. "All units, scatter and find cover." Captain Chen's voice crackled over the comm. "Use buildings, terrain, anything to break their line of sight." The battle devolved into a brutal, close-quarters slugging match. The human tanks used their low profile and the rubble-strewn landscape to ambush alien units, striking hard and fading away before retaliation could come. Elena found herself in the thick of the fighting, coordinating tactics from the command tank and occasionally manning the guns herself when crew members needed relief. The acrid smell of cordite and burning metal filled the air, punctuated by the screech of energy weapons and the thunder of tank fire. As the day wore on, it became clear that while the aliens had superior technology, they lacked the tactical flexibility of the human forces. Their strategies were predictable, relying heavily on overwhelming force rather than adapting to the fluid battlefield situation. "They're like a sledgehammer," Sergeant O'Malley commented during a lull in the fighting. "All power, no finesse. We're the scalpel, striking where it hurts most." Elena nodded, a grim smile on her face. "Let's hope this scalpel is sharp enough to cut out the cancer that's killing our world." As the sun began to set on the second day of battle, a new opportunity presented itself. The civilian militia, which had been scouting the alien rear positions, reported a vulnerability. "They've got some kind of central processing node," the militia leader reported, his voice excited. "It's guarded, but not as heavily as you'd expect. I think they don't believe we can reach it." Elena's mind raced, seeing the potential. If they could destroy this node, it might disrupt the entire alien harvest operation. But it would require a dangerous push deep into enemy territory. "It's a trap," General Stone warned, studying the intel. "They're trying to lure us in." "Probably," Elena agreed. "But it's also our best shot at dealing a crippling blow. We need to take the risk." After heated debate, a plan was formed. A small, elite force of tanks would make a lightning strike on the processing node, while the main body of human forces launched a series of diversionary attacks to draw alien attention. As the strike force prepared to move out, Alina made a decision. Despite protests from General Stone and Captain Chen, she insisted on joining the mission. Her knowledge of alien technology might prove crucial in destroying the node. "I didn't come this far to sit on the sidelines," she said firmly, strapping herself into the gunner's seat of the lead tank. "Besides, someone needs to make sure you soldiers don't break the fancy alien tech before I can study it." As night fell, the strike force moved out, their engines muffled, using the cover of darkness to slip through gaps in the alien defenses. Elena's heart pounded as they approached the alien facility, its strange, otherworldly architecture looming against the starry sky. "This is it." Captain Chen's voice was tense but controlled. "All units, weapons free. Hit them hard and fast. For Earth." The tanks burst from cover, guns blazing. Alien defenders, caught by surprise, scrambled to mount a defense. Energy beams crisscrossed the night sky as the humans pushed towards their objective. Elena directed fire from her position, calling out weak points in the alien structures. The node itself was a pulsing, crystalline structure, humming with strange energies. As they fought their way closer, Elena realized with growing excitement that this wasn't just a processing node. It was a central control hub for the entire harvest operation. Destroying it would do more than disrupt the aliens' plans. It might cripple their entire presence on Earth. But time was running out. Alien reinforcements were closing in, and the diversionary attacks could only hold their attention for so long. They needed to strike now or lose their chance forever. In that moment, as energy beams sizzled overhead and the fate of the world hung in the balance, Elena made a decision that would alter the course of the battle, and perhaps the future of humanity itself. Internal conflicts and external challenges. The alien control hub loomed before them, its crystalline structure pulsing with otherworldly energy. Elena's mind raced, analyzing the alien technology even as their tank lurched forward under heavy fire. "We need to get closer," she shouted to Captain Chen over the din of battle. "I think I can overload their systems, but we have to be right next to it." Chen gritted her teeth, skillfully maneuvering the massive vehicle through a hail of energy blasts. "You heard the lady. All units, push forward. Give us cover." The remaining tanks of their strike force formed a protective wedge, their guns blazing continuously to keep the alien defenders at bay. Elena's tank, dubbed Iron Hope, pushed through the gap, taking hit after hit but refusing to falter. As they closed in on the hub, Elena saw her chance. "Stop here," she commanded, already unstrapping herself from the gunner's seat. "What are you doing?" Chen demanded, eyes wide with alarm, as Elena popped the hatch. "Something incredibly stupid," Elena replied with a grim smile. Before anyone could stop her, she was out of the tank, sprinting towards the alien structure with a hastily assembled device in her hands. Energy beams sizzled past her as she ran, the acrid smell of ozone filling her nostrils. She could hear Chen shouting orders, directing covering fire to protect her mad dash. The alien hub grew larger in her vision, its strange geometries making her eyes water. With a final burst of speed, Elena reached the base of the structure. Her hands shook as she attached her device, a jury-rigged EMP generator, modified based on what they'd learned of alien technology. It wasn't elegant, but it didn't need to be. It just needed to work. As she activated the device, a high-pitched whine filled the air. The crystalline structure began to vibrate, cracks appearing along its surface. Elena turned to run, but a stray energy blast caught her in the leg, sending her sprawling. Through a haze of pain, she saw Iron Hope plowing towards her, heedless of the danger. Captain Chen's face appeared in the hatch, reaching out to her. With the last of her strength, Elena grasped Chen's hand and was hauled into the tank. "Go, go, go," she gasped, clutching her injured leg. The tank reversed at full speed, just as the alien hub exploded in a blinding flash of light and energy. The shockwave hit them like a physical blow, sending Iron Hope skidding sideways. As the light faded and the dust settled, an eerie silence fell over the battlefield. The remaining alien forces seemed to have frozen in place, their movements erratic and uncoordinated. "It worked," Elena breathed, hardly daring to believe it. "We've disrupted their entire command structure." The human forces seized the moment, pressing their advantage. Without central coordination, the alien units fell into disarray, easy prey for the determined tank crews and their newfound militia allies. As reports of victory after victory flooded in, Elena allowed herself a moment of hope. They had done it. They had struck a critical blow against an enemy that had seemed unbeatable. But their triumph was short-lived. Back at the main human encampment, as Elena's leg was being treated, General Stone approached with a grave expression. "We've got a problem," he said without preamble. "The aliens are adapting faster than we anticipated. They're already rebuilding their command structure, and they're learning from their mistakes. Alina's heart sank. They had won a battle, perhaps even turned the tide of the war, but the alien threat was far from over. And now they faced a new challenge, an enemy that was evolving, becoming smarter and more dangerous with each engagement. As if that wasn't enough, internal conflicts began to surface within the human ranks. The initial flush of victory had worn off, replaced by exhaustion and fear of what was to come. Some, led by a charismatic tank commander named Victor Roth, argued for pressing their advantage, launching an all-out assault on the alien mothership. "We've got them on the ropes," Roth declared in a heated strategy meeting. "We need to finish this now, before they can recover." Others, including Captain Chen, advocated for a more cautious approach. "Our resources are limited," Chen countered. "We can't afford a costly frontal assault. We need to be smart, pick our battles." The debate raged on, with both sides growing increasingly bitter. Alina found herself caught in the middle, seeing the merit in both arguments but unsure of the best path forward. To make matters worse, reports began to come in of strange phenomena affecting their tanks. Crews reported unexplained malfunctions, weapons firing at reduced power, and in some cases, vehicles shutting down entirely for brief periods. "It's like they're sick," Sergeant O'Malley reported, his usual bravado tempered by concern. "These old girls have quirks, sure, but nothing like this. It's as if something's draining them." Alina threw herself into investigating the problem, running test after test on the affected tanks. What she discovered chilled her to the bone. "The aliens are learning," she explained to a grim-faced group of leaders. "They've adapted their energy weapons. Instead of trying to destroy our tanks outright, they're now targeting specific systems, draining power and disrupting operations." The implications were clear. Their greatest advantage, the simplicity and resilience of their old-world technology, was being systematically neutralized. As they grappled with this new threat, another crisis emerged. The civilian population, emboldened by the recent victories, began to emerge from hiding in greater numbers. While many were eager to join the fight, they also brought with them the problems of any large group: the need for food, shelter, and protection. "We're soldiers, not babysitters," Roth grumbled during one particularly tense meeting. "We can't fight a war and run a refugee camp at the same time." But Alina saw an opportunity where others saw a burden. "These people are our strength," she argued. "They're mechanics, farmers, engineers. They have skills we desperately need. We can't win this war with tanks alone." Her words struck a chord, and slowly, a new strategy began to take shape. The human encampment evolved into a true community, with civilians taking on vital support roles. Makeshift factories sprang up, producing spare parts and ammunition. Hydroponic gardens were established to supplement their dwindling food supplies. But even as their base of operations grew stronger, the alien threat loomed ever larger. The mothership, momentarily stalled by the destruction of their control hub, had resumed its ominous descent. It was clear that time was running out. They needed a new plan, a way to strike at the heart of the alien invasion force before it was too late. But with their forces divided and their technology failing, victory seemed further away than ever. As Alina stood on a hill overlooking their camp, watching the bustle of activity below and the distant, malevolent form of the alien ship above, she felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. They had come so far, achieved the impossible, but it still wasn't enough. She knew that the next decision they made could determine the fate of not just this battle, but of humanity itself. As the sun set on another day of this desperate war, Alina steeled herself for the challenges ahead. The final battle was coming, and they would need every ounce of human ingenuity, courage, and unity to face it. The question was, would it be enough? The final battle and humanity's triumph. The war room was thick with tension as Alina presented her plan. Maps and holographic displays flickered, showing the positions of both human and alien forces. The mothership loomed large in every projection, a constant reminder of the threat they faced. "We can't win this war conventionally," Elena began, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "But we might be able to turn the aliens' own technology against them." She outlined a daring strategy. Using data gathered from their previous encounters, Elena proposed a way to hijack the aliens' energy transmission network, the same system they used to drain power from human tanks. "If we can overload their network at a crucial moment, it could create a feedback loop, disabling their shields and weapon systems," she explained. "But to do that, we need to get close, very close." The room erupted into debate. It was a risky plan, one that would put their remaining forces in extreme danger. But as General Stone pointed out, they were running out of alternatives. "We're out of time and options," he growled. "The mothership will be in position to begin final harvesting within 48 hours. We move now, or we don't move at all." As the details were hammered out, a sense of finality settled over the camp. Everyone, from the hardened tank crews to the civilian support staff, knew that this would be their last stand. Win or lose, the fate of Earth would be decided in the coming battle. Preparations began immediately. Elena worked tirelessly with a team of engineers to modify the remaining tanks, turning them into mobile energy siphons. Each vehicle would act as a node in their makeshift network, collecting and redirecting the aliens' own energy against them. Captain Chen oversaw the tactical planning, coordinating with militia groups and the remaining regular military units to create a multi-pronged assault. They would need to draw out the alien ground forces, keeping them occupied while a strike team made for the mothership. As dawn broke on the day of the attack, an eerie calm settled over the human forces. Elena found herself standing beside Iron Hope, the tank that had carried them through so many battles. Captain Chen approached, her face set in grim determination. "Ready for this?" Chen asked, checking her weapons one last time. Elena nodded, trying to project more confidence than she felt. "As ready as we'll ever be. Let's go make history." They climbed aboard, joining Sergeant O'Malley and the rest of the crew. As Iron Hope rumbled to life, Elena felt a surge of emotion. Whatever happened today, these people, soldiers and civilians alike, had shown the very best of humanity. Their courage, their resilience, their unwillingness to give up even in the face of overwhelming odds was nothing short of inspiring. The attack began with a massive barrage from their remaining artillery, more a distraction than a serious attempt to damage the alien defenses. As expected, swarms of alien fighters and ground units poured out to meet the threat. The human forces engaged them in a series of running battles, using hit-and-run tactics to draw the aliens further from the mothership. All the while, Iron Hope and a small group of specially modified tanks made their way towards their true objective. As they approached the massive alien vessel, the full scale of their task became apparent. The mothership was a behemoth, its surface bristling with weapons and strange, pulsing energy nodes. "All units, initiate Phase 2, Elena called over the comm. At her signal, the modified tanks activated their energy siphons. Immediately, the alien defenses reacted, energy beams lashing out to drain their power. But this time, the humans were ready. The tank systems absorbed the energy, redirecting it through the network Elena had designed. As more and more alien weapons engaged, the feedback loop grew stronger. Alarms blared inside Iron Hope as the energy levels spiked dangerously. "We can't take much more of this," O'Malley shouted, fighting to keep the system stable. "Just a little longer," Elena urged, her eyes fixed on the redouts. They were so close. Suddenly, a massive tremor shook the mothership. Sections of its hull began to glow an angry red as the overloaded energy network backfired. Shield generators exploded in brilliant flashes of light, and weapon systems went dark across its surface. "It's working," Chen exclaimed. All units pressed the attack. The human forces surged forward, emboldened by the sight of the faltering alien defenses. Tanks that had been on the verge of being overwhelmed now found themselves facing a disorganized, vulnerable enemy. But the aliens weren't defeated yet. As Alina had feared, they began to adapt, rerouting power and bringing secondary systems online. The window of opportunity was closing fast. "We need to end this now," Alina said, a plan forming in her mind. "Captain, can you get us inside that thing?" Chen's eyes widened as she realized what Alina was suggesting. "You can't be serious." "Dead serious. If we can reach their central power core, I think I can trigger a chain reaction. It's our only shot at bringing down the whole ship." After a moment's hesitation, Chen nodded. "All right, let's do this. O'Malley, full speed ahead." Iron Hope charged forward, its guns blazing to clear a path. Other tanks moved to support them, drawing fire and creating a corridor straight to the mothership's now exposed landing bay. As they plowed into the alien vessel, Alina was struck by the sheer alienness of it all. The interior was a maze of pulsing organic-looking corridors and strange, shifting geometries. But there was no time to marvel at the otherworldly architecture. Guided by the energy readings on her hastily modified sensors, Alina directed them towards the heart of the ship. Alien defenders swarmed around them, but in the confined spaces, Iron Hope's thick armor and powerful guns gave them the advantage. Finally, they reached a massive chamber dominated by a swirling vortex of energy, the mothership's main reactor. Alina's mind raced as she took in the alien technology, looking for weaknesses, points of vulnerability. "There," she shouted, pointing to a series of crystalline structures surrounding the reactor. "Those are the control nodes. If we can overload them all at once, it should set off a chain reaction." Chen nodded grimly. "You heard her. Target those crystals. Fire everything we've got." Iron Hope's main gun roared, joined by a barrage from its secondary weapons. The other tanks that had made it this far added their firepower to the assault. One by one, the crystal nodes shattered, releasing pulses of energy that caused the reactor to fluctuate wildly. Alarms blared throughout the ship as the chain reaction began. The chamber shook violently, pieces of alien technology crashing down around them. "Time to go," Chen yelled, already throwing Iron Hope into reverse. They raced back through the corridors they had fought so hard to reach, alien pursuers forgotten in the face of the impending explosion. As they burst out of the mothership's landing bay, the scene that greeted them was one of chaos and triumph. The alien forces, cut off from their central command and power source, were in full retreat. Human tanks and fighters harried them mercilessly, turning the tables on their once unstoppable foe. "All units, clear the area," Alina broadcasted on all frequencies. "The mothership is going to blow." They had barely made it to a safe distance when the alien vessel erupted in a cataclysmic explosion. The shockwave flattened buildings and sent vehicles tumbling, but when the dust settled, a cheer went up from the human forces. The mothership, the heart of the alien invasion, was no more. In the days that followed, mopping up operations continued around the globe. Without their central command and harvesting apparatus, the remaining alien forces were disorganized and easily defeated. Humanity had won, against all odds. As Alina stood on a hilltop overlooking the battlefield, now quiet save for the sounds of reconstruction, she felt a complex mix of emotions. They had saved the world, but at a terrible cost. So much had been lost, so many lives changed forever. Captain Chen joined her, looking out at the scene below. "So," she said, a hint of a smile on her face, "what do we do now?" Alina considered the question. The challenges ahead were immense, rebuilding their shattered world, adapting the alien technology they had captured, preparing for the possibility of future threats. But looking at the determination on the faces of those working in the valley below, she felt a surge of hope. "Now," she replied, her voice filled with quiet confidence. "Now we do what humanity has always done. We adapt. We rebuild. We look to the stars not with fear, but with determination. And we remember that no matter what the universe throws at us, we will face it together." As the sun set on a free earth, Alina knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, humanity would face them with the same courage, ingenuity, and unity that had carried them through their darkest hour. The war was over, but humanity's greatest adventure was just beginning.